Jeffrey Basil found guilty of second-degree murder. You saw it first right here on 7 Eyewitness News, a jury convicting Basil of the highest possible charge.
Now, this case really all came down to one issue: intent. We have live team coverage on the story tonight from the courthouse with 7 Eyewitness News reporters Ed Branch and Jason Grenauer.
Jeff Basil, Joanna, and Keith had a set of highly experienced attorneys at his side throughout this entire 8-day trial. But not only they, not even they, could get him out of this second-degree murder charge. And no matter how much doubt they tried to cast, the jury just simply didn't buy it. Basil was represented by a man who, by all accounts, is one of the best defense lawyers in Western New York. The last high-profile case Joel Daniels worked was that of Dr. James Corasanti, who was accused of hitting and killing Alex Rice in Amherst back in 2011. In that case, the notorious doctor was acquitted of manslaughter charges, the serious charges he faced. But in this case, as I mentioned, not even Daniels could get Basil out of trouble.
Well, it's not startling at all. We take every case as it comes. We've got more coming up, and we'll go on to the next one. Cases depend on their facts, and in this case, the facts were tough. This was one of the tougher cases that Andy Latempio and Jessica Culpet and myself have tried. I don't think we would change anything if we had to try it again. That's just the way the jury saw it, and that's the way it goes.
This is not the first time Jeff Basil has been in trouble with the law. He has a prior felony conviction, but this time he'll be in jail a lot longer and for much more serious actions. Basil, of course, faces 25 years to life when he's sentenced next month. This case, though, is not over. There's still a civil case pending that will be taken up, as you can imagine, much more vigorously now that the criminal proceedings are over. But as for the criminal proceedings, Jason Grenauer joins us about the mountain of evidence that was stacked against Jeff Basil.
Yeah, the prosecution, how did they do it in this case? Proving that intent and ultimately proving that charge of second-degree murder. Well, afterwards, the lead prosecutor in this case called it one of the strongest pieces of evidence we had. Expert testimony from a UB physics professor that explained the science and the numbers behind that shove that night at Molly's Pub, the shove that ultimately killed Bill Sager. Now, the prosecution had several pieces of key evidence to go off of, including the security footage from Molly's Pub and those jailhouse phone calls from Jeff Basil, which helped the prosecution ultimately convict Basil on the highest charge he faced, second-degree murder. Now, the assistant district attorney credited the statistical analysis from Professor William Kinney with explaining to the jury exactly what Basil did. Now, this trial was ultimately about Basil's intent, and assistant district attorney William Belling says the physics helped prove just that.
The fact that Sager was launched from 3 feet from the edge with 370 pounds of force was significant, I think, to the jury. It certainly was significant to me when I learned those figures. It's Newtonian physics, which I last took in high school, so I'm glad that we had a resource in the university that was able to help us out with that.
Belling says the security video from that night also added to the recreation of what went into that shove and Basil's intent in doing so. So again, after 8 days of a trial, 6 men, 6 women handing in that verdict, ultimately of a guilty verdict against Jeffrey Basil, convicting him second-degree murder in connection with the death of Bill Sager. As Ed mentioned, he will now be sentenced next month. That wraps things up here from State Supreme Court. For Ed Dranch, I'm Jason Grenauer for 7 Eyewitness News. Back to you in the studio.